Do you guys remember when men were men? Do you remember when it was frowned upon for men to whine and complain all the time? When you were considered weak to be in touch with your sensitive feminine side? You guys remember that? That didn't mean that men couldn't have feelings or emotions or that men couldn't cry if the situation was appropriate. But there used to be a time when dudes presented toughness, masculinity publicly, and they left the emotions to be felt at home. For the past 20 years, the woke psychological community, they have been pushing for men to be more sensitive. Women like a sensitive man. They like a man who is willing to cry on their shoulder instead of being a shoulder to cry on. This is 100% bullshit. Go out and try to convince a woman to date you by being a pussy-ass beta male. Let me know how that works out for you. One of two things will happen. You will strike out and find yourself spending Friday night attending the woke circle jerk on Twitter, or you will find yourself in a relationship where the woman has all the power and dominance. That relationship ain't sustainable because the roles, the dynamics are the opposite of what they're supposed to be. This sensitive men movement, this push to rid society of what the shit fucks like to call toxic masculinity, it's led to the rise of another movement, the victim movement. Nowadays, everyone wants to be a victim. Right now, the mainstream media is portraying Brittany Griner as the ultimate victim. This poor man, he is being wrongfully detained in Russia. Who cares if he tried to sneak a cucumber through customs? Several months ago, Will Smith tried to be a victim at the Oscars. The prepubescent boy Megan Rapinoe constantly displays her victimhood. If you want to find the most victims in entertainment, grab your remote and turn your TV to ESPN. A network that used to represent masculinity now represents everything wrong in sports. Elle Duncan, victim. Maria Taylor became a household name claiming to be a victim of mythical racism at ESPN. Mina Kimes rode her victim status into a prominent role as an NFL analyst. And I'm still waiting for someone to explain to me how someone who has never put on a fucking helmet can properly analyze the NFL. The only helmet Mina Kimes puts on is the helmet she wraps around her cucumber so she can practice safe woke sex. At a network filled with victims, there is one victim that stands above all. There is one man or birthing person who regularly displays his feminine energy. There is one man who constantly tries to prove that he is no longer infected with toxic masculinity. I have removed the toxic masculinity from my body and replaced it with virginity. If you would like to do the same, please contact Anthony Fauci. The birthing person I'm talking about is Ryan Clark. If someone were to ask, who is one of the biggest woke beta males on television, Ryan Clark would be at the top of the list. Don't take my word for it. You guys know Casey always comes with the proof. June of 2020. Ryan Clark's son was allegedly called a racial slur by a woman at Whataburger. Listen to him describe the incident and the fear that he felt. Roll the film.
As a black man and the father of a black young man, I'm happy he's alive, period. That was my first thought. And then that immediately turned to anger. And what's crazy is I wasn't mad at the young lady or the woman. I wasn't mad at the manager. I was mad at myself. I was mad with Jordan. And I'm not necessarily sure that that's the right emotion to have, but nothing pisses me off more than being scared. And even though I knew the moment was over, I was still in that moment as his dad. I was still picturing, as I'm reading it, I'm still picturing what's going on. And I'm playing out other scenarios in my mind. I'm playing out a scenario of if this woman would have had a weapon and she could easily say that these three young black men were threatening her.
Dude, this fucking guy is a former NFL player. And you want me to believe that you were afraid of being attacked by a fucking woman? Well, I mean, I kind of do believe it because Ryan Clark has consistently proven he has no balls. This dude is constantly whining and complaining. There must be a directive at ESPN to display your victim status whenever your name's been out of the headlines for a while. If I remember correctly, Mina Kimes did this a while back. She showed the mythical misogyny that she has to deal with on Twitter as a woman in sports media. Ryan Clark did the same thing. Last November, he screenshotted a DM that he received from one of his lonely male followers. The guy called him racist and anti-gay slurs. The message looked like it was written by a third grader. There was absolutely no reason for Ryan Clark to release this publicly. Everyone in the public sphere has to deal with this kind of bullshit. The YouTube filter for my comment section, it is filled with hateful, derogatory messages aimed at me. Who fucking cares? There was no reason for Ryan Clark to highlight this. The only reason he did was to bring attention on himself. Look at me, I'm the victim. This guy sent me his woke mating call. He wants to poke me with his shovel, but I'm not okay with that. I prefer the rake. This is the same shitfuck who refused to work with Sage Steele at ESPN. 2 years ago, ESPN produced a special on members of Woke United Methodist. They were talking about mythical racism in America. Sage Steele was supposed to be included in the special. You know, because she's a black woman. Ryan Clark got her removed from the broadcast. Why? Because Sage Steele refuses to be baptized in the woke holy water. Sage Steele refuses to be victimized based on the color of her skin. Ryan Clark doesn't like that. He also didn't like that Sage Steele refused to be Fauci fucked. Ryan Clark's down with the butt bongo. He just could not understand why Sage Steele would refuse Fauci's cucumber. This morning on Woke Take, Ryan Clark once again displayed more of his beta male behavior. There was a debate between Chris Russo and Ryan Clark about the possibility of Cooper Kupp being a future Hall of Famer. Now, obviously, ESPN is running out of ideas for topics to debate. At minimum, we're at least 10 years away from Cooper Kupp even being considered for the Hall of Fame. At this point in his career, who fucking cares? He's only been in the NFL for 5 years, got a long way to go. But either way, that's what they were talking about. Chris Russo is calmly making his point. Ryan Clark keeps interrupting him. The more Chris Russo speaks and speaks calmly, the more Ryan Clark raises his voice. He begins to get intense, which is fine. That's fine. I ain't got no problem with it. But I bring that up for a reason. Because Ryan Clark accuses Chris Russo of doing exactly what he was doing himself. Watch for yourself.
Cooper Kupp is not going to the Hall of Fame.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If he never played another game right now. Oh, yes, he won a Super Bowl. Yes, he is.
Cooper Kupp.
Yes, if Cooper Kupp right this second never played another football game, he would get the votes to go to the Hall of Fame. It's not even debatable. Cooper Kupp's been the best receiver in football for 3 years in a row. He's going to the Hall of Fame.
Mad Dog, that's a lie. That is a lie. And stop raising your voice to try to be right. That's a lie. Until this year, Cooper Kupp wasn't coming in anybody's top 5.
Cooper
Kupp wasn't a top 5 receiver until this year.
Oh,
like,
no,
what film have you watched?
Kupp
You're supposed to be a historian.
Oh, no. Go ask the voters. Go ask them. Go ask the Peter Kings and the people like that.
Well, they must be voting like you vote for the Heisman, where you just vote on whoever the hell you want based on the fact that they play quarterback.
Ryan, I've been voting.
Cooper Kupp is not considered.
I've been voting. Hold on now. You said something. I'm going to comment. I've been voting for the Heisman since before you were born.
Stop screaming at me, bro. That's the last time.
I was voting for the. No, you said something that wasn't right.
Stop screaming at me, birthing person! You're hurting my feelings! My entire career in the NFL, I had evil white coaches yelling at me. I thought ESPN was a safe space, and now I have another evil white man screaming at me. Is it just me, or was Chris Russo not the one yelling in that clip? Chris Russo's high energy, he's high intensity. The guy does yell sometimes on his radio show, but what we just saw was Chris Russo being calm. If this were someone like Kendrick Perkins telling Chris Russo to lower his voice, stop screaming, I wouldn't think anything of it. But with Ryan Clark, it got me to wondering why. Why was he so offended by Chris Russo? Judging by his history of being a victim, if I had to guess, Ryan Clark got offended because a white man was supposedly yelling at him. For people like Ryan Clark, if an older white man is yelling at you, it's classified as mythical racism. White men are not allowed to raise their voice at me. It triggers me. It reminds me of being oppressed, which I've never actually experienced. That short segment right there, it highlights one of the many problems at ESPN. You can't have a fucking meaningless conversation about Cooper Kupp potentially going into the Hall of Fame, something that wouldn't even be under consideration for at least another decade. You can't have a meaningless conversation without someone being triggered. Oh, it hurts me so deeply. I don't know how much longer Chris Russo will be allowed on Woke Take. Parishioners at Woke United Methodist, they have serious problems with Chris Russo. For starters, he checks multiple woke enemy boxes. Older white male, check. Refuses to identify as a birthing person, check. Doesn't acknowledge mythical racism, check. Told Draymond Green to shut the fuck up and play basketball, check. The problem for ESPN, the audience loves Chris Russo. People outside of Twitter, otherwise known as normal people, they enjoy Chris Russo and his commentary. He is a rarity at ESPN. He sticks to sports. He doesn't bring up the fact that L. Duncan's mom didn't have access to an abortion clinic. Outside of Stephen A. Smith, Chris Russo's the only personality on Woke Take that generates headlines. Now, of course, we're talking about Ryan Clark now, but the only time he generates headlines is when he's victimizing himself and we're all making fun of him for it. I Googled his salary. ESPN is paying Ryan Clark $1 million a year. For what? What fucking value does this dude provide? How many viewers tune in for Ryan Clark? He's the beta male version of Maria Taylor. All he does is complain about mythical racism. Like I said, ESPN's got problems with Chris Russo. Audience loves him. Virgins on Twitter hate him, which means Chris Russo's days are likely numbered. ESPN, more than any other network on television, bases their business decisions based on Twitter reactions. But let me know what you think. A screaming Ryan Clark accuses Chris Russo of screaming at him. He got triggered. I got a challenge for you. If you can think of a bigger beta male at ESPN than Ryan Clark, you let me know. Sound off in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys tomorrow.